In the 1960s, thousands of steam locomotives were sent to the scrapyard and turned into razor blades. Luckily, some of them escaped this death sentence and were restored to provide heritage railways the attraction of steam. One of them, named after Battle of Britain hero Sir Frederick Pile, was sent to the scrapyard in 1964, and it escaped being turned into razor blades when it was rescued in 1986 by Mike Vout. Now, nearly 40 years later, parts of it are being cut up and turned into robots. But these are not ordinary robots. These robots are sold off to railway enthusiasts to help raise funds for the restoration of this locomotive. These robots, desktop pen holders and other souvenirs are made from old parts that are worn out and corroded that can't be reused again. They will be replaced with new items as the restoration moves forward. The parts used were the superheater elements from the locomotive's boiler. After this video, if you check out one of our other videos called Scrap or Save, you can actually see the work involved in removing superheater elements. That job was on this locomotive's classmate, which was Sir Keith Bark, 34053. These are the superheater elements of Sir Frederick Pile, 34058. And they're not looking too good. They're looking pretty ropey there, especially at the bottoms of the bends. Huge holes there. They were last used back in 1964. Now, I don't think they're going to hold 250 pounds of steam pressure. This is the nut and the bolt that holds the elements into place onto the superheater manifold, otherwise known as the header. Here you can see me just cutting the elements up into a easy to handle length. There we go, that's that job done. We are not going to use everything here, so we are going to dismantle this. All we need is the nut and the bolt. The bracket and the two washers aren't required for this particular job, but we're not going to throw those away. We'll find a few other things to use those for later on. Luckily the nut is not too tight. One of the reasons why we can't reuse these bolts is because of the damage at the top of the threads. You can see where it's been worn out there, corrosion and wear and tear. See, the new ones are at the top, and you can see at the top of the threads there at the bottom of the shank, everything has got a lot slimmer. We're going to use our Clark 6-inch bench grinder fitted with a rotating wire brush to clean up our bolts. Begin with the very end there and then move on to cleaning the rust out from the threads, which is quite hard work because the brush doesn't like going in between those threads. You have to keep pushing it deeper into the wheel and then withdrawing it so the motor can pick the speed back up again. We then have to keep withdrawing the bolt from the brush so the motor can get back up to speed. This job does get a lot easier once the threads are completely clean and we move on to the shank of the bolt where it's a lot smoother, so the rust just doesn't seem to cling to that very well, so it's easily cleaned up. We'll speed these back up again. It's not too hard there, but now we're going on to the more intricate work, which is round by the bolt head there. That requires quite a push into the wheel. Quite often the wheel does try and stall, but it is doing its job pretty effectively. As you can see that the bolt is coming up quite shiny in places where the work is done. It's coming together. Right, we're nearly done. Just a quick inspection there to see if there's any bits and pieces there that need a quick going over again. That looks like it's pretty much done. Switch off. We now move over to our 14-inch Draper metal chop saw, and we're going to use this to cut the bolts up into various different shapes and sizes. A more accurate and cleaner cut is achievable with one of these instead of just a normal angle grinder, and we're going to use it for doing quite a lot of work on these future projects. Okay, then let's get the workpiece clamped into the chop saw and get it cut to size. Come on, Dean, put it around the right way. That's more like it. It's very important at this point that we actually get the cutting disc in exactly the right place. It's got to go just behind the bottom of the head of the bolt. If it touches the head of the bolt, then the cut's going to take probably 20 times longer to get through, because we'll be cutting through the entire head of that bolt. These are high tensile steel bolts that we're cutting through here, so they do take a little while to get through each one. I think we worked it out at about 30 seconds. There we go, not bad at all. And that's a pretty accurate cut. Quite pleased with that. We are now going to flip what is left of the bolt over and cut the entire threaded end away from the shank. No measuring involved here, we just cut it all off. I'm sorry for the shaky camera there on this shot. We have speeded it up by quite a lot just to save us a bit of time. And here we are back to normal speed. And just drops off there. And that's the end of that cut. We are now left with the unthreaded part of the bolt, which is known as the shank. That's pretty warm, so I don't want to hold that for too long. We want to measure the length of that and then divide it by 2, because we need both halves of this, hopefully the same length. And we drop that back into position. And hopefully measure the position to where the disc will cut. Make sure we get 50-50 cut. Recheck. Is that the same both sides? Spot on. Let's quickly run the saw through that and see what we have. If we put together all the components of this bolt, you can see each individual piece now gathered together. You can see there the head of the bolt there to the left, the 2 parts of the shank and the thread to the right. We now begin work on the tubing, which makes up the main body of the robot. We're going to measure out, see how many robots we can get out of this one particular piece of tubing. And as it turns out, we can get 3. Let's get it into the saw, clamp it down and cut some more. We'll now drop the saw down onto the marks. Clamp and cut. These tubes aren't made from the same type of tensile steel as what the bolts were made of, but they are still quite a good quality steel and take quite a bit of cutting, but also we are cutting both tubes at the same time, and that is 4 points of contact for that disc to cut through, so it's doing quite a bit of work. And you can't push down on it too much, otherwise the disc will break, and also it does get very, very hot. Oh, that's pretty hot holding that. Let's put it down. It's quite spectacular looking at these sparks. I decided to show you a bit of a slow-mo there with the parts just dropping off. Excellent. We were about to spin these up on a lathe, but we've got some burrs in the way on the outside of the tubing, so we've got to grind those off. This is actually played at normal speed, it's just that I'm actually working quite fast here, which makes a change for me. It's been a few years since I last used a lathe, but we'll borrow this lathe. It is rather on the small side. The chuck is actually too small for the piece of metal to fit snugly inside, but we'll manage. The workpiece is hanging out a little bit long, but at least it's in there. It's going to be a bit noisy, but here we go. It is only a small face there that we are going to be facing off. The cutting tool that we're using on this particular machine has been machined to cut in both forwards and backwards directions. So we're going to go fore and aft. So we're going to be facing the piece of metal off, going backwards and forwards. So we're just going to keep going backwards and forwards until we've got enough metal off so it cleans up. It's not the best camera shot in the world, but it is where I'm standing. With some editing magic, it is now done. The face is clean, so let's open the chuck, whip out the piece, give it another quick check, and then we'll turn this around and do the other end. But we're not going to bore you to tears with that, so we'll just move on to the next stage. You have to remember that these tubes spent many years inside a steam engine in use, and many more years not in use, rusted away. So you've got some quite crusty flakes of rust on the inside, as well as some burrs there on the inside we've got to deal with. But to get rid of those large flakes, just give it a good old scrape with a with an old rough file there just to get some of the muck out. And then after that we'll attack it with a wire brush on a drill. It only needs a quick tickle with the wire brush on the drill. Not much more is required there, but it does clean up the inside. We are now going to clean the rust off the tubes the same way as what we did with the bolts, with the bench grinder with the wire brush. I'm not going to bore you too much with this, so we'll speed things up a little bit. That's that done. Let's just have a quick check. Make sure it's satisfactory. Yep, that'll do. These here are the shank of the bolts as cut. We're just going to grind a chamfer all the way around the bottoms and the tops of those, just to make sure we can get a good clean weld on them. Yes, nothing much exciting to see there, just a few sparks, so we'll move on to the next stage, which is the bolt head, which will form the foot of our robots. We just need to grind the top off there just to clean this up. Give that a good grind there, because that's the actual welding part. That's where the leg is going to be welded onto the foot. Well, we are going heads, tails, knees and toes in reverse here. We started with the toes, now we're moving to the head. We're just going to give that a good grind. Obviously the head there is the nut from the original bolt. This end needs fully cleaning up so it gets a good weld onto the body. Okay, then let's start sticking this lot together. Here we have a foot all prepared, and the foot bone is connected to the leg bone. Not quite yet, but it will be in a minute. If I can just pick it up. Don't forget to put your gloves on, Dean, otherwise you will get burnt. It seems like the camera didn't record any sound on this footage, but never mind, I apologise for that. There's nothing I can do about that now. That's the first leg done. We've just got a few more other legs to do now. So without further ado, we'll crack on with the next one. It's another foot. Just grabbing another leg to place on top. And they just literally just perched on top, and I have to usually hold the top of that in position, otherwise the wire from the welder actually pushes the leg off of the foot. Not the best ideal setup, but it is what it is. Thinking about it now, I should have used one of the welding magnets that I've got, which I did actually purchase specifically to do this job, but neglected to actually use them. We're just welding up legs for 2 robots here, so that's 4 legs, and then we'll move on to do something else. The body of the robot gets made now, and that is made of 2 of these tubes welded together. We've already prepped them a little bit by grinding each side a little bit just to make sure the welds go on clean, because even though they're wire brush, some of the metal isn't clean enough to get a good weld, so we've ground them down just a little bit. We're going to have 2 big dollops of weld here because we can't quite get to the point of where the 2 tubes join, so we just got to get as close as possible and basically bridge the gap with the weld. That's 1 big dollop done. On to the next one. The action is just slightly out of shot there, but believe me, you're not missing much. It's just another dollop of weld being created. We'll be able to see the results of that any second. Not particularly impressive, but it does the job. That's the 2 sections of the body welded together. We take those out of the vise. Now it's time to join the body up to the legs. I shall be using a green marker pen as an assistant here for this job. And that is just lifting up the legs just so they contact the body of the robot. Otherwise they're just floating around in mid-air and we can't get a weld. There we go. The legs are just touching the body there. Just need to get everything into final position there. We still don't know if the legs or the feet even are flat with the ground, so we've got to make sure they're flat. We're just picking up a bit of steel there and just touching them on there and doing everything by eye to make sure that everything is as good as we can reasonably get it. And now we go for the welder. The earth clamp at this point is actually clamped to the workbench, as that is all steel. So that way the clamp isn't dragging the work piece out of position. Well, the thigh bone is now connected to the hip bone. We now move on to the arms. We missed out welding the left arm on, so we're going on to the right one now. We do actually wind a little flat part into the arm there, just so you get a decent mounting point onto the body. I'm just holding that on there now. And just put a little dub of weld to start off with, just to make sure it's in position. And there we go. Oh no, I'm happy with that, so we're going to carry on. Yeah, it's looking good. Extra bit of weld just under the arm. And we're done. So now we have 2 arms, 2 legs and 2 feet, but no head. So it looks like we'll grab a head, pop it on there. Yep, just checking that we made sure that we've cleaned it up ready. And this time we're going to put the earth clamp on the leg there, just to make sure we get a good earth. We don't want things to go pear-shaped. So we just position the head on there so everything looks right, or as right as it's going to get. We can now reposition the earth clamp onto the robot itself to get a better earth, and just put a couple of tacks just onto the back of the neck. There we go. Then we can reposition the robot, do some welding underneath. We've got a bit of problem with the gun there. Give it a bang, sort that out. Put the second tack in. So still not quite happy with that. So just knock it over. There we go. Got a better angle there. We can have another weld just to finish up. There we go. That's enough of that. Every robot should have a face, and we are going to use super glue to stick our face on. A few small dollops there for the eyes. And then for a mouth just below. And we're going to be using 2 nuts for the eyes and half a washer that we've previously cut in half using a guillotine for the mouth. Always remember to put the lid back onto the super glue, otherwise you won't get another job out of it. Let's put the eyes on the robot. Nice square nuts there that we actually used once before. Put up some Dexian shelving. They have a second life as well. Hopefully we don't stick our fingers and thumbs to the robot. To move that glue around a little bit, making sure we don't get any of it on our fingers. Eyes forward, soldier. Is that a smile on your face, I see? It is now. We don't have upside down smiles here. We only have happy robots. We have happy robots because we have more than one of them. Look, he has a friend. We have 2 there. We also make and sell pen holders that match these lovely robots. They're the pen holders. They'll either come in a 3 tube or a 2 tube, depending on which is available and which one you would like. And these are all screwed to these lovely mahogany bases. And they come with a little sticky plaque on there which explains the origin of the metal involved. If you like one of these robots or one of the pen holders, you contact the friends of 34058 Sir Frederick Pile on Facebook, and your Jerry will let you know where they are and how you can buy them. You can even contact Southern Locomotives Limited at their website, which is www.southern-locomotives.co.uk. Our sales and information stand will be at the Spring Steam Gala at the Mid-Hants Railway on the 26th, 27th and 28th of April, and also at the Strictly Bullied event at the Swanage Railway on the 7th, 8th and 9th of June. So come over and meet us, have a chat, talk about Fred, and hopefully buy a lovely robot or pen holder, and even make a donation and help us restore Sir Frederick Pile 34058, a Bulleid Light Pacific. And we can then get this locomotive steaming again, just like we have with its sister locomotive here, Sir Keith Park. Don't forget to please hit that like button and subscribe to the channel. You can also watch our scrap and save video by clicking on the left hand square, and subscribe to the channel by clicking the circle in the middle, and watch one of our other videos by clicking on this square to your right. Thank you very much for watching.